Sarah Martinez never imagined that a single moment could change everything she thought she knew about courage. Growing up in a small Texas town, she was the girl who bandaged scraped knees at school and dreamed of becoming a doctor. Her father, a retired Army sergeant, taught her that helping others was the highest calling. By age 18, she had already completed EMT training and was working part-time at the local hospital while studying pre-med. The turning point came during her sophomore year of college when a Navy recruiter visited campus. Unlike other students who walked past the booth, Sarah stopped. The recruiter, Petty Officer Jenkins, noticed her interest in the medical corps materials. He explained how Navy corpsmen served alongside Marines and even with special operations units. The idea of combining her medical passion with military service sparked something deep inside her. Sarah's decision to enlist shocked her family. Her mother worried about sending her daughter into danger, while her father felt conflicted between pride and concern. Her professors tried to convince her to finish college first, but Sarah had made up her mind. She wanted to serve where she was needed most, and that meant getting the best medical training the military could offer. Boot camp in Great Lakes, Illinois, was brutal, but transformative. Sarah excelled in every physical challenge and scored at the top of her class in medical knowledge. Her drill instructors noticed her natural leadership abilities and recommended her for advanced training. What they didn't tell her was that exceptional corpsmen sometimes received opportunities that few others would ever see. The letter arrived 3 months after boot camp graduation. Sarah was invited to attend a specialized medical training program at a classified location. The paperwork was vague, mentioning only advanced combat medical procedures and special operations support. Her commanding officer pulled her aside and explained that this was an opportunity that came to maybe 1 in 1,000 corpsmen. The training would be demanding, dangerous, and unlike anything she had experienced. Sarah accepted without hesitation. 2 weeks later, she found herself on a transport plane heading to a remote facility in Virginia. Looking around at her fellow trainees, she realized she was one of only 3 women among 30 participants. The men were seasoned Marines, Army medics with multiple deployments, and Air Force pararescue men. Sarah suddenly felt very young and very inexperienced. The facility looked like a cross between a military base and a medical school. Modern buildings housed state-of-the-art simulation labs, while obstacle courses and training ranges stretched across hundreds of acres. Their instructor, Master Chief Rodriguez, gathered the group on their first morning. His scarred hands and weathered face told stories of countless missions. He explained that they would be training to serve as medics for the most elite units in the military. The first week focused on advanced trauma care under extreme conditions. Sarah learned to perform surgery in complete darkness, treat multiple casualties while under simulated enemy fire, and make life or death decisions in seconds. The physical demands were intense, but the mental pressure was even greater. 3 trainees had already dropped out by the end of the first week. Sarah struggled initially with the combat aspects of the training. While her medical skills were exceptional, she had never fired a weapon in anger or moved through hostile territory. The special operations soldiers who served as assistant instructors pushed her harder than anyone else, questioning whether she belonged in such an elite program. Their doubt only fueled her determination to prove them wrong. During week 2, the training scenarios became more realistic and dangerous. Live ammunition cracked overhead as Sarah treated wounded actors who screamed in agony. Explosions shook the ground while she performed delicate procedures with steady hands. Her instructors watched every move, taking notes and whispering among themselves. Sarah began to realize that this wasn't just training. It was an extended audition for something much bigger. The breakthrough came during a particularly challenging exercise. A simulated helicopter crash left multiple casualties scattered across rough terrain while enemy forces closed in. Sarah took charge of the medical response, organizing other trainees and prioritizing treatment under extreme pressure. Her decisive action saved virtual lives while keeping the team focused on their mission. Even the skeptical instructors had to admit her performance was exceptional. As the 3rd week began, Master Chief Rodriguez pulled Sarah aside for a private conversation. He explained that her performance had been outstanding, but the real test was just beginning. The next phase would push her beyond anything she thought possible. He asked if she was truly ready to commit to becoming part of something that few people even knew existed. Sarah looked him in the eye and said she was ready for whatever came next. The fourth week of training began before dawn with an unexpected wake-up call. Sarah and the remaining trainees were roused from their bunks and loaded onto blacked-out vehicles. No explanations were given as they were driven through winding mountain roads for what felt like hours. When the vehicles finally stopped, they found themselves at a facility that wasn't on any official map. The new location was unlike anything Sarah had seen in her military career. The buildings were unmarked and surrounded by multiple layers of security. Guards with no visible unit patches checked credentials multiple times before allowing entry. Sarah realized they had entered the world of special operations, where secrecy was paramount and normal military protocols didn't apply. Their new instructor introduced himself simply as Doc Thompson. His background remained classified, but his expertise was immediately apparent. He had trained medics for the most elite units in the military, including Navy SEALs, Delta Force, and other special operations teams. The remaining 15 trainees represented the best of the best, but Thompson made it clear that not all of them would complete this phase of training. The medical scenarios became exponentially more complex and dangerous. Sarah learned to perform emergency surgery while rappelling from helicopters, treat chemical weapon exposure in contaminated environments, and provide medical care during underwater operations. Each exercise pushed the boundaries of what seemed humanly possible, testing both medical knowledge and physical endurance. What surprised Sarah most was the psychological component of the training. Thompson explained that special operations medics didn't just treat physical wounds, they served as mental health support for teams operating under extreme stress. Sarah learned to recognize signs of combat fatigue, provide counseling during missions, and help teammates process traumatic experiences. This holistic approach to medical care was unlike anything taught in conventional military training. The weapons training intensified dramatically during this phase. While Sarah had always viewed herself as a healer, she now learned that special operations medics must be capable fighters. She mastered advanced marksmanship, close-quarters combat, and explosive breaching techniques. The philosophy was simple. A dead medic couldn't save lives. Sarah had to become as proficient with weapons as she was with medical instruments. Night operations became a particular focus of their training. Sarah learned to navigate using only starlight, perform surgery with night vision goggles, and coordinate medical evacuation in complete darkness. These skills would prove crucial in special operations, where most missions occurred under cover of darkness to maintain the element of surprise. The psychological pressure was relentless. Instructors deliberately created chaos and confusion during medical scenarios, forcing trainees to maintain focus under extreme stress. Sarah watched as several more classmates broke under the pressure and requested to be transferred back to conventional units. Those who remained formed a tight bond, supporting each other through the most challenging training any of them had experienced. Thompson introduced a new concept during week 5, the golden hour. In conventional medicine, patients had a good chance of survival if they received definitive care within the first hour after injury. In special operations, that window was often much shorter due to remote locations and hostile environments. Sarah learned to make impossible decisions about resource allocation and patient prioritization when multiple teammates were wounded simultaneously. The scenario that changed everything for Sarah occurred during a simulated hostage rescue operation. Acting as the team medic for a SEAL unit, she had to treat multiple casualties while the firefight continued around her. One of the wounded SEALs was actually a real team member testing her performance under pressure. His evaluation would determine whether she advanced to the final phase of training. During the exercise, Sarah demonstrated not only exceptional medical skills, but also tactical awareness that impressed even the veteran SEALs. She identified the most defensible position for treating casualties, coordinated with the team leader on evacuation procedures, and maintained communication with external support throughout the chaos. Her performance was flawless, earning respect from operators who rarely acknowledged outsiders. The evaluation period that followed was excruciating. While other trainees knew immediately whether they had passed or failed scenarios, Sarah was kept in suspense for 3 days. Thompson finally called her to his office and explained that her case was unusual. Her medical skills were exceptional, and her tactical knowledge had improved dramatically, but there was something else they needed to discuss. Thompson revealed that the program had a classified component that only a select few trainees ever learned about. The Navy was developing a new type of special operations medic who would embed with SEAL teams for extended periods. These medics would receive specialized training that went beyond conventional medical support. They would become full members of the teams they supported, sharing in all aspects of special operations missions. Sarah's heart raced as Thompson explained that she had been selected as a candidate for this experimental program. The training would be even more intense, the missions more dangerous, and the commitment longer than anything she had originally signed up for. She would essentially become a SEAL herself, albeit with specialized medical responsibilities. The question was whether she was willing to take that final step into the most elite community in military special operations. Without hesitation, Sarah accepted the opportunity. She had come too far and learned too much to turn back now. Thompson smiled for the first time since she had met him, and explained that the real training was about to begin. Everything she had experienced so far was just preparation for what came next. The transition to SEAL training was unlike anything Sarah had imagined possible. After accepting Thompson's offer, she was transferred to Naval Special Warfare Command in Coronado, California. The moment she stepped off the plane, she could feel the ocean breeze and smell the salt air that would become her new reality. This was where legends were made, and where she would either succeed or fail spectacularly. Sarah was assigned to a modified version of basic underwater demolition SEAL training, known as BUD-S. While she wouldn't complete the full program like traditional SEAL candidates, she would undergo key portions to ensure she could operate effectively alongside SEAL teams. The instructors made it clear that no accommodations would be made for her gender or her role as a medic. She would meet the same standards as everyone else. The physical demands were crushing from day one. Sarah's previous training had prepared her well, but SEAL standards pushed human endurance to its absolute limits. She learned to swim vast distances in frigid ocean water, run countless miles in soft sand, and perform hundreds of push-ups and pull-ups daily. Her hands became raw and bloody from rope climbing, and her muscles ached constantly from the relentless physical punishment. Hell Week arrived like a storm. For 5.5 days, Sarah and her fellow trainees received less than 4 hours of sleep total while enduring continuous physical and mental challenges. They crawled through mud, carried heavy boats over their heads, and performed countless exercises while instructors screamed criticism and encouragement. The cold Pacific Ocean became both enemy and teacher, as hypothermia threatened constantly. What sustained Sarah through Hell Week wasn't just physical toughness, it was her medical knowledge. She understood exactly what her body was experiencing and how to manage the stress. She helped fellow trainees deal with minor injuries and exhaustion, earning their respect and gratitude. Her role as a medic became a source of strength rather than a liability, as others looked to her for both medical support and moral encouragement. The psychological warfare employed by the instructors was particularly intense. They constantly questioned Sarah's motivation, suggesting that she didn't belong in such an elite program. They reminded her that she could quit at any time by simply ringing the bell that stood prominently in the training compound. Many nights exhausted and in pain, Sarah stared at that bell and considered giving up. But something deeper than physical discomfort drove her forward. Swimming became Sarah's particular challenge. While she had always been a competent swimmer, SEAL standards required excellence in all aquatic environments. She learned to swim vast distances underwater without breathing apparatus, navigate in zero visibility conditions, and perform complex tasks while submerged. The pool became her second home as she practiced relentlessly to meet the demanding standards. The combat training during this phase was unlike anything in Sarah's previous experience. She learned advanced close-quarters combat techniques, explosive breaching methods, and small unit tactics. The medical training continued alongside tactical instruction, creating a unique skill set that few people in the world possessed. Sarah was becoming something new, a warrior healer capable of saving lives in the most dangerous situations imaginable. Weapon systems training consumed entire weeks. Sarah mastered not only standard infantry weapons, but also specialized equipment used by SEAL teams. She learned to operate everything from underwater weapons to advanced sniper systems. The philosophy remained constant. She needed to be as proficient with weapons as any other team member while maintaining her medical expertise. The breaking point came during week 12 of training. A particularly challenging exercise combined underwater navigation with combat medicine, in a scenario that seemed designed to be impossible. Sarah had to swim to a simulated crash site, treat multiple casualties, and coordinate their evacuation while under enemy fire. Physical exhaustion and sleep deprivation had pushed her to her absolute limits. As Sarah struggled to complete the exercise, everything seemed to go wrong simultaneously. Her breathing apparatus malfunctioned underwater, forcing her to surface prematurely. Enemy fire simulations disrupted her medical procedures repeatedly. Her teammates appeared to doubt her ability to complete the mission successfully. For the first time since beginning training, Sarah felt truly defeated. The instructor who had been observing the exercise was Master Chief Peterson, a legend within the SEAL community. He pulled Sarah aside after the failed exercise and explained that failure was part of learning in special operations. He shared stories of his own failures during training and early missions, emphasizing that what mattered wasn't perfection, but persistence and the ability to learn from mistakes. Peterson revealed something that shocked Sarah. The exercise had been designed to be nearly impossible to complete. The real test wasn't whether she succeeded, but how she responded to failure and setback. Her reaction analyzing what went wrong, supporting her teammates, and immediately requesting to retry the exercise that showed the mental toughness that SEAL teams required. The revelation that failure was expected and even encouraged as a learning tool transformed Sarah's approach to training. She began taking calculated risks, pushing her limits without fear of making mistakes. Her performance improved dramatically as she embraced the SEAL philosophy of aggressive action and continuous learning. As the training program neared its end, Sarah reflected on how much she had changed since that first day in Texas. The young woman, who had bandaged scraped knees, had become a warrior capable of operating in the most hostile environments on Earth. But more importantly, she had learned that true strength came not from individual achievement but from the bond between team members who trusted each other completely. The final exercise would test everything she had learned and determine whether she was ready to join an operational SEAL team. The final exercise began at 300 hours on a moonless night off the coast of San Clemente Island. Sarah and 5 SEAL candidates found themselves in a small boat cutting through rough seas toward an objective that remained classified until the last possible moment. The salt spray stung their faces as they reviewed their limited intelligence about the mission ahead. Sarah checked her medical kit one final time, ensuring every piece of equipment was secured and accessible. Their target was a mock terrorist compound where hostages were being held by an unknown number of enemy combatants. The scenario was designed to replicate real-world conditions as closely as possible, complete with live ammunition in designated areas and actors playing both hostages and terrorists. Sarah's role was complex: provide medical support for the team while also serving as a fully functional operator, capable of engaging enemy forces when necessary. The insertion went perfectly. Using small inflatable boats, the team reached the rocky shoreline undetected. Sarah's swimming skills, hard-earned through months of punishing training, allowed her to keep pace with the seasoned SEAL candidates as they navigated treacherous waters in complete darkness. Once ashore, they cached their maritime equipment and began the approach to the compound. Moving through the terrain required every skill Sarah had learned about stealth and tactical movement. The team communicated through hand signals and whispered commands as they navigated around sensors and avoid simulated enemy patrols. Sarah's medical pack was heavier than standard combat gear, but she had learned to move with it as naturally as the others carried their weapons. The compound reconnaissance revealed a more complex situation than their initial briefing had suggested. Intelligence reports had indicated 3 buildings, but satellite imagery showed recent construction of additional structures. The number of hostages was also unclear, with thermal imaging suggesting more people than originally estimated. Sarah and the team leader made real-time adjustments to their assault plan. The assault began at precisely 05:15 hours with coordinated explosions that breached multiple entry points simultaneously. Sarah moved with the primary assault element through the main building, her weapon ready while her mind cataloged potential casualty collection points and evacuation routes. The months of training had taught her to think tactically and medically at the same time, a skill that few people ever developed. Everything changed when the first team member went down. During the clearing of the second floor, Petty Officer Rodriguez took simulated gunfire to the chest and leg. In the scenario, his wounds were life-threatening and required immediate intervention. Sarah had seconds to transition from operator to medic while the firefight continued around her. This was the moment that would define her entire career. Under intense pressure and with live ammunition being fired overhead as part of the exercise, Sarah began treating Rodriguez's wounds. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, establishing airways, controlling bleeding, and preparing him for evacuation. The other team members maintained security while she worked, trusting her to save their teammate's life while they completed the mission. The exercise scenario became more complicated when a second team member was wounded during the hostage extraction. Sarah now faced the nightmare scenario every combat medic feared. Multiple casualties requiring immediate attention with limited resources and ongoing enemy contact. She had to make instantaneous decisions about treatment priorities while coordinating with the team leader about tactical requirements. Sarah's performance during this crisis impressed even the most skeptical observers. She managed to stabilize both wounded team members while providing tactical advice to the team leader about evacuation routes and timing. Her medical training allowed her to work efficiently under pressure, while her tactical knowledge helped her coordinate with the rest of the team seamlessly. The hostage extraction phase tested different aspects of Sarah's training. Several of the simulated hostages had been injured during their captivity and required medical assessment and treatment. Sarah had to quickly determine which injuries were life-threatening, which could wait for evacuation, and how to move compromised individuals safely out of the compound. The extraction became a running battle as enemy reinforcements arrived at the compound. Sarah found herself carrying one wounded hostage while helping another walk, all while the team fought their way to the evacuation point. Her physical conditioning, developed through months of grueling training, proved essential as she maintained pace with the team despite the additional burden. The helicopter extraction was perhaps the most challenging aspect of the entire exercise. With wounded team members, injured hostages, and ongoing enemy contact, Sarah had to coordinate medical care during the flight while helping provide suppressive fire from the aircraft. The multitasking requirements pushed her skills to their absolute limits. As the helicopter climbed away from the compound, Sarah reflected on everything that had happened during the exercise. She had successfully treated multiple casualties, participated in combat operations, and helped rescue civilians, all while maintaining the tactical discipline that SEAL teams required. The exercise had tested every aspect of her training, and she had performed flawlessly. The debrief that followed was extensive. Senior instructors and operational SEAL team leaders analyzed every aspect of the exercise, paying particular attention to Sarah's performance under pressure. Her medical interventions had been textbook perfect, but more importantly, her tactical awareness and team integration had exceeded all expectations. Master Chief Peterson delivered the final assessment. Sarah had not only completed the training program successfully, but had demonstrated the rare combination of medical expertise and tactical proficiency that the Navy's new Special Operations Medic program required. She would be assigned to an operational SEAL team and would deploy with them as a full member, rather than just medical support. The ceremony that marked the completion of her training was small but significant. Sarah received her insignia as a qualified Special Operations Medic, joining an elite group that numbered fewer than a dozen people worldwide. As she looked at the small pin that represented months of the most challenging training imaginable, she realized that her real education was just beginning. Sarah's first operational assignment came sooner than expected. Just 2 weeks after completing her training, she received orders to report to SEAL Team 7 at Naval Base Coronado. The team was preparing for deployment to Afghanistan, where they would conduct counter-terrorism operations in some of the most dangerous regions of the country. For Sarah, this represented the culmination of everything she had worked toward. The chance to use her skills in real combat situations where lives truly hung in the balance. Meeting her new teammates was both exciting and nerve-wracking. These were seasoned operators with multiple combat deployments who had earned their reputations through years of dangerous missions. As the only woman on the team and the first Special Operations Medic they had worked with, Sarah understood that she would need to prove herself all over again. The team leader, Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison, made it clear that her training credentials were impressive. but combat would be the real test. The team's preparation for deployment was intensive and comprehensive. Sarah participated in every aspect of their mission planning, from studying intelligence reports about enemy activity to rehearsing assault scenarios in mock Afghan villages. Her medical input became valuable during planning sessions as the team considered casualty evacuation procedures and medical resupply requirements for extended operations in remote areas. The weapons and equipment familiarization period allowed Sarah to work with specialized gear that hadn't been available during training. She learned to operate advanced communication systems that would allow her to coordinate with medical evacuation helicopters, and she practiced with experimental medical devices designed specifically for battlefield use. The team also helped her customize her equipment, load to balance medical supplies with the tactical gear necessary for combat operations. Sarah's integration into the team accelerated during a month-long training exercise in the Mojave Desert. Operating in harsh conditions similar to Afghanistan, the team practiced the types of missions they would likely encounter during deployment. Sarah's medical skills were tested daily as team members sustained minor injuries from the demanding training, but more importantly, she demonstrated her tactical proficiency during simulated combat scenarios. The breakthrough in team acceptance came during a particularly challenging night raid exercise. When the team leader was simulated as wounded during the assault, Sarah took charge of both his medical care and the tactical situation. Her decisive leadership and clear communication helped the team complete their mission, while ensuring proper medical care for their wounded leader. From that moment, the other team members began viewing her as a complete operator rather than just a medic. Personal relationships within the team developed gradually. Sarah learned that each team member had joined special operations for different reasons, but all shared a commitment to excellence and protection of their teammates that transcended individual motivations. She found herself becoming not just a medical asset, but a trusted confidant as team members shared concerns about family, career, and the psychological demands of their profession. The deployment to Afghanistan began with a long flight that took the team halfway around the world to their forward operating base in Kandahar province. Sarah's first view of Afghanistan from the aircraft revealed a harsh landscape that looked nothing like the training environments she had experienced. The mountains, deserts, and scattered villages represented a complex operational environment where medical evacuation could be hours away and where mistakes would have deadly consequences. The forward operating base was a small outpost that housed multiple special operations teams conducting missions throughout the region. Sarah quickly established herself in the base medical facility, coordinating with other medical personnel and ensuring her team's medical supplies were properly maintained. She also began studying the types of injuries and illnesses that were common in the local operating environment. The team's first missions were relatively straightforward reconnaissance operations that allowed Sarah to gain experience in the operational environment without the stress of immediate combat. She learned to navigate the challenging terrain while carrying her full medical load, and she practiced communication procedures with helicopter evacuation assets. Most importantly, she began to understand the rhythm of combat operations in Afghanistan. The mission that changed everything came during their third week in country. Intelligence had identified a high-value target in a remote mountain village, and Sarah's team was tasked with conducting a capture operation. The planning phase revealed numerous medical challenges, including the remote location, limited evacuation options, and the possibility of civilian casualties who might require treatment. The helicopter insertion took place before dawn in a valley surrounded by towering mountains. Sarah could feel her heart pounding as the aircraft approached the landing zone, knowing that this was the moment when all her training would be tested in actual combat. The team moved quickly from the helicopters toward their objective, using night vision equipment to navigate the rocky terrain in complete darkness. The target building was larger than intelligence had suggested, and thermal imaging revealed more people inside than expected. As the team prepared for their assault, Sarah positioned herself to provide both fire support and immediate medical care if needed. Her role required her to be close enough to help wounded teammates, but far enough away to avoid becoming a casualty herself. The assault began with explosive charges that breached multiple doors simultaneously. Sarah followed the entry team into the building, her weapon ready and her mind focused on both tactical threats and potential medical situations. The months of training had taught her to process multiple streams of information simultaneously, while maintaining situational awareness of everything happening around her. The capture operation was successful, but complications arose when one of the detained individuals appeared to be suffering from a serious medical condition unrelated to the operation. Sarah found herself treating a potential enemy combatant whose life was in immediate danger. The ethical and tactical implications of the situation tested everything she had learned about the medical profession and military service. As the team prepared for extraction with their prisoner and intelligence materials, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since her first day of training. She was no longer the young woman who had dreamed of becoming a doctor while bandaging scraped knees in Texas. She had become something entirely new, a warrior healer, operating in one of the most dangerous places on Earth, saving lives while serving her country in ways she never could have imagined. The mission that would define Sarah's entire career began like any other, with an urgent intelligence briefing at 0200 hours. A captured terrorist had revealed the location of a weapons cache that posed an imminent threat to coalition forces throughout the region. The target was a compound deep in hostile territory, requiring a dangerous insertion and immediate action before the enemy could relocate their assets. Sarah's team had just 6 hours to plan and execute one of their most challenging missions to date. The intelligence picture was incomplete and constantly changing. Satellite imagery showed recent activity at the compound, but the number of enemy combatants remained unknown. More concerning was the remote location, which would make medical evacuation extremely difficult if anyone was wounded during the operation. Sarah studied the terrain carefully, identifying potential helicopter landing zones and calculating flight times to the nearest medical facility. Lieutenant Commander Morrison gathered the team for final mission planning. The objective was clear: infiltrate the compound, secure the weapons cache, and capture or neutralize any enemy forces present. Sarah's role would be particularly crucial, given the isolation of the target and the likelihood of enemy resistance. She would need to be prepared for everything from routine injuries to mass casualty situations. The helicopter flight to the target took them over some of Afghanistan's most treacherous terrain. Sarah checked her medical equipment repeatedly as the aircraft navigated through mountain valleys, using terrain features to avoid enemy radar systems. The pilots flying the mission were among the best in the military, but even they expressed concern about the challenging insertion point and uncertain weather conditions. The team fast-roped from the helicopters into a small clearing several
kilometers from the target compound.
The insertion was flawless, but Sarah immediately noticed that the intelligence reports had underestimated the difficulty of the terrain. The route to the objective would require crossing steep ravines and exposed ridgelines that would make the approach much more dangerous than originally planned. Moving toward the compound in the pre-dawn darkness, Sarah's team discovered that they were not the only military unit operating in the area. Radio intercepts suggested that enemy forces were aware of coalition activity and were actively hunting for special operations teams. The mission had suddenly become much more complicated, with the possibility of enemy contact during the approach march. The compound itself was larger and better defended than intelligence had indicated. Thermal imaging revealed at least a dozen enemy combatants, some in prepared fighting positions that suggested they had been expecting an attack. Sarah and the team leader quickly revised their assault plan, taking into account the increased enemy presence and the limited avenues of approach to the target buildings. The assault began with precision sniper fire that neutralized sentries around the compound perimeter. Sarah moved with the main assault element as they breached the primary building, her weapon ready and her medical bag positioned for quick access. The enemy resistance was immediate and fierce, with automatic weapons fire erupting from multiple positions as soon as the attack began. The first casualty occurred within minutes of the initial assault. Petty Officer Chen took rifle fire to the shoulder and arm while clearing one of the target buildings. Sarah moved to his position under heavy fire, using her tactical training to bound from cover to cover while maintaining situational awareness of the ongoing battle. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency as she assessed Chen's wounds and began immediate treatment. The wound was serious but not immediately life-threatening, allowing Sarah to stabilize Chen quickly before returning her attention to the tactical situation. However, the team's problems were just beginning. Intelligence reports had failed to mention the presence of heavy weapons in the compound, and the team now found themselves under fire from a machine gun position that threatened to pin them down indefinitely. Sarah's tactical training proved as valuable as her medical skills. During the protracted firefight, she identified a flanking route that would allow the team to approach the machine gun position from its blind side, and she provided covering fire while other team members maneuvered into position. Her ability to think both medically and tactically made her an invaluable team member. During the complex operation, the situation deteriorated rapidly when enemy reinforcements began arriving at the compound from multiple directions. Radio chatter indicated that a much larger enemy force was converging on their position, threatening to overwhelm the small SEAL team. Sarah helped coordinate the defense while continuing to treat Chen's wounds and prepare for additional casualties. That turning point came when Sarah spotted movement in a building that the team had not yet searched. Her medical training had taught her to observe human behavior carefully, and something about the movement pattern suggested that civilians might be present in the compound. She reported her observations to the team leader, who immediately modified their tactics to account for potential non-combatants. The presence of civilians complicated everything. Sarah found herself treating not only wounded team members but also innocent people caught in the crossfire. A young Afghan girl had been wounded by flying debris, and an elderly man was suffering from what appeared to be a heart attack, brought on by the stress of the battle. Sarah's medical training took over as she prioritized care for those who needed it most, regardless of their nationality or allegiance. The extraction became a nightmare scenario as enemy forces closed in from all sides. Sarah had to coordinate medical care for multiple casualties while helping the team fight their way to the evacuation point. The helicopter pilot showed extraordinary courage by landing in a contested area to pick up the wounded, but the approach was dangerous for everyone involved. As the helicopter climbed away from the compound with Sarah's team and their casualties aboard, she reflected on the events of the past several hours. She had successfully treated wounded teammates and civilians while participating in one of the most intense combat operations of the war. More importantly, she had proven to herself and her team that she belonged among the most elite warriors in the military. The medals and recognition that followed the mission were gratifying, but what mattered most to Sarah was the quiet respect of her teammates. She had earned her place among them through courage under fire and dedication to saving lives in the most dangerous circumstances imaginable. The girl from Texas who had dreamed of becoming a doctor had achieved something far greater. She had become a guardian angel for those who fought in the shadows to protect freedom around the world. Years later, Sarah would look back on that mission as the moment when she truly understood her calling. She was not just a medic or just a warrior. She was something unique and essential, a bridge between the worlds of healing and fighting that allowed others to come home safely to their families.